please.
How about, have you ever heard of a Kevin from New York?
Yes, I have heard. Let's take him. Let's
Kevin
put old
from
Kevin
New
on.
York, you are on Talk Heathen. What have you got for us?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, you guys. Well, to the call screener, the reason why I brought up the topic of the Apocrypha, well, I know I've been guilty of bringing up random subjects in the past, but I really want to elaborate now on why I really believe in God, having to do with the topic of the Apocrypha.
Kevin,
But
this is
yes.
you, Kevin. I know because I know your voice. Okay, I went back through your previous calls, and when you said, you know that you go on to different topics all the time, you weren't just whistling Dixie, Lloyd. That's a phrase we say.
Okay, I was lost at that point. Go on.
Yeah, you've called. Well, from what I can see, to be a total of 24 or more times. I went through, yes, viewers at home, Johnny P. Angel and Kevin, for your edification, I went through
like a back cave. He has lots of monitors up, and every now and then he likes to do investigations on our callers.
I did a little investigation, as Lloyd's just didn't say, and you've called about 24 times. I may have missed the last couple of calls, but you've talked about the Book of Enoch, near-death experiences. You've talked about how the language barrier with understanding the Bible and how struggles of power throughout history has resulted in the editing of the Bible, thus denominations. You've talked about hallucinations. You've talked about how reality is systems based on systems based on systems, therefore God. You talked about how everyday people can use Ouija boards to access the occult, and how the dietary laws were parables. And I've got dates, I've got episode numbers. Planet X is a star that proves God, with orbits around Sol every 3,600 years. Ancient texts, Nag Hammadi codices, the pineal gland. Oh, the pineal gland. You've talked about the Peter Principle. You've talked about Eric said that we were treating the symptoms by dealing with a new topic every time, but really we should nail down what you talked about in the past, and then you went back into the Book of Enoch, but you didn't identify where you went wrong. You said how math is objective and points to a God. You talked about why we shouldn't check for falsifiability because that might give us a bias for falsifiability. Prophecy, apocryphal texts from the 3rd century. Circumcision has nothing to do with the foreskin, but of the heart, which was a good one. Subconsciousness is the mind of God. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were the authors of the Gospels, but later on you realize that they probably weren't. More about the Book of Enoch, and black holes are contained in the Book of Enoch. The Bible is a trilogy of parables. You talked about the modal ontological argument. You talked about why we should trust military pilots, since they're our best pilots and they have the best senses, and they're telling us about aliens and evidence of non-physical beings. Remember that old one? That was with Dan and Jimmy.
Yeah.
You talked about, do we have complete knowledge of the Bible? That was with J. Mike and Matt. That was a good one. Then you talked about the Testament of Shadrach, and how Shadrach asks questions to God about free will. Then you talk about the Ark of the Covenant with my friend Kenneth Leonard and Matt Dillahunty, peace be upon him sometimes. So now you want to talk, and many, many more, or not. Now today, Kevin from New York, and when I go through this list, I don't mean to, I don't know what I mean to do by that, but
he has the same list about me. If it makes you feel any better,
I do.
He does this. He just makes lists.
Now you want to talk about the Apocrypha, and that seems to be consistent with some of your earlier calls. The problem, Kevin. All right, the problem, Kevin, and we talked about that when you and me and V had a conversation maybe 6 months ago, where we identified the fact that you bring up new things all the time. You never dig down into anything specific. And next week, you're going to call about something else. And the week after that, you're going to call about something else. But the one thing that you never, ever seem to really ever do, Kevin, with much love, is evaluate the method by which you latch on to new things, your epistemology. You just talk about a new idea, a new cockamamie theory, a new thing. So forget about the Apocrypha. No, you're done.
We're doing this because we love you, Kevin.
We love you, Kevin. All right.
You have a problem.
I want to talk about
you
Kevin.
Have a problem. We're here to help you through it.
Kevin, stop. Kevin, stop. My friend, please.
I promise you that I'm really nailing down this time why.
Okay. I get it.
To the essence on why my argument on why I believe in God.
Good. You can talk about that after we talk about this first, okay? Because I do want to hear it. Okay. I want there to be, Kevin's calling. We're all afraid. He's about to shake our belief in not believing in things ever at all. So how do you determine whether or not a claim has validity and soundness? How do you determine whether there's substance to something? How? What's your method? What's the process you go through?
Well, it has to be tested. It has to be compared to other opinions. It has to be thoroughly researched.
Very good. You said tested. You said tested. All right. I want to hear about.
Yeah.
One, how do you determine if something is tested?
Well, you either have to do it yourself or you have to do thorough research on the person who tested it.
Walk me through the process.
So
okay,
I'm on the tester.
I'm Johnny from New York. I open up a Chrome or Firefox or Internet Explorer or whatever window, and I go into Google or whatever I use, InfoSeek perhaps, and I type in, what do I type in? What's the thing I type in? Walk me through the process.
Apocrypha.
Okay, you type in Apocrypha. Okay.
You see, an internet search isn't going to do it, though.
Cool. Why won't an internet search do it?
Simply because you don't entirely know the agenda behind a person who's listening to the information that you're reading.
Okay, wait.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting.
Unless you do thorough research on it.
Okay. How did you arrive at Apocrypha as a searchable term, Kevin?
Well, these are the really big ones for me, and I really want to nail down why it is that I believe in God with the topic.
I know it's nice to want things, Kevin.
Because
I want things too. I'm asking you, how did you arrive at the word Apocrypha to be a searchable term in your quest for knowledge and truth and justice in the American way? How did you get there? Where did Apocrypha come from?
I don't know exactly how I found this word, but to tell you the meaning of it, that's what I first wanted to find out. Was that
so you heard the word and you were curious about it?
And I wanted to find the meaning of it, yes.
Okay, because I that happens to me too. I'm being, this is a real thing. I hear words and I'm like, what the heck does that mean? So I go on the internet and I research that word, Apocrypha. And I know a little bit about the Apocrypha, okay? So you started researching Apocrypha. What is it, right? And you did this on the internet, or you went to a library, or you had some books. What did you do?
I both went to the library and I've researched it online.
What's the name of a website that you went to? Or what's the name of a book that you referenced when you looked up Apocrypha?
Well, there is sacredtext.com. It's got a whole bunch of stuff that's not even Bible related, but it does list the books that are contained within the Apocrypha.
Okay, sacredtext.com. Cool. So I'm there now. Site can't be reached because I can't spell. So now I'm there. All right. With textbooks, which spells, free texts. No, that can't actually be a real website. Hold on. Maybe www. sacredtexts.com. You're going to walk me through this because I want to get inside your head. And there's a rope tied around my waist. Lloyd's got the other end of it. Okay, sacredtexts.com is a domain name that may be for sale. Click here to inquire. So I think you got the URL wrong. Is there another URL you want me to check out?
There is a punctuation between sacred and text.
Okay, I'm going to put sacred.text.com.
It might be sacred-text.
Okay, it's not a period. All right. Sorry, the folks at home, but I think this is important. Sacred-text. Bingo.
If you're just joining us, viewers, we are indulging in an expedition into Kevin's mind.
Have we ever gotten here before, Kevin? Kevin, really? Maybe we have, and I missed it. Have we ever gone to sacred-texts.com together on the show with me, you, V, Jimmy, Dan, anyone? Have we ever done this?
No.
We are exploring new horizons.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So, okay. All right. So we've got some good stuff here, folks. Sacred-text.com. I hope it's not toxic. We got the teachings of Zoroaster, not the shitty Zoroaster from a couple weeks ago.
But is not sponsored by sacred-text.com.
There's world religions.
Listen, I would really like to focus on what I called you guys about.
I know you would, Kevin. I know you would. And like I said, it's nice to want things, but I want to focus on this. Seriously, Kevin. This is a deep vein of really good stuff.
Peace.
Oh my goodness. We've got the Kebra Nagast, however you say, the splendor of God, the teachings of Zoroaster. We've got the Talmud, Native American stuff, I Ching. Folks at home, go to this website. Make sure that you have virus protection, but go to this website. We've got all kinds of stuff. Shintoism, Tantra. I'll be going back here on Thursday and seeing what we have here. How do I? So you saw Apocrypha, cool beans. Why did you not click on Tantra? Why did you not click on Piri?
I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm going to have to side with Johnny here. I would have gone straight to the Tantra.
Yeah. Me and Lloyd, we like to party. And so why did you not go to
there's
any of this stuff
that I've read from there, but
are you starting from A and working your way through Z? Because that's another way to do it. Are you doing it that way?
Sure.
Can I ask a serious question? Can I ground our conversation in something serious for a moment? Okay. Yes. Kevin, earlier when you were talking about your method, and I think it's fascinating that Johnny has kind of taken the conversation down this route. Earlier when talking about your method, you said that what was important was the agenda of the source. So you want to test, apparently, what's the agenda of the person writing the information? Let's say it's a Wikipedia article on tantric positions. What's the agenda of the person writing the article? Is it to objectively talk about tantric positions, or is it to push these tantric positions on people, for example? So, this kind of logical process, does this apply in any way to the writers of the Bible books or to the writers of the apocryphal books? In other words, are you remotely interested in what their agenda is, in what the Bible writers' agenda was?
Well, of course I am. It applies to everybody. But
so what do you think their agenda was?
As it's not a good source to use in any college paper.
But what do you think the agenda of the Bible writers was?
Well, you can remove all that, and you can just simply ask, "Is this true or not?"
Also,
you know what I mean,
so you don't want to apply that question to the Bible writers.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the Bible writers, you want to remove that question of what their agenda is and ask a different question.
Yeah, I mean,
that's interesting.
Why would you do that?
First of all, because there's other things to consider. Because when we're talking about the Bible,
is it possible that you're presupposing? Is it possible that you're presupposing that the Bible writers are writing it for a reason other than that they want to control people and feed people a narrative? Is it possible that you're presupposing that the Bible writers are inspired by God and want to impart divine truth, so you're not interested in what their agenda is because you feel as though you already have it?
Sure, that can be considered. But what you just said is subjective to no one but yourself. What I'm trying to say
that doesn't make any. Kevin, doesn't make any sense. When we talked about Kevin, really quick, when we talked about the method by which you come upon new information and new theories and new strategies and hypotheses about the universe, one of the first things you said was to try to root out a writer's agenda, and so I want to focus on that because you said it very early on in the conversation, and I think that's very telling. And I think it's important for us to always examine whatever we're doing, what the agenda of the writer is. So let's explore, forgetting about setting aside the agenda of the gospel writers, because you might have a better reason for doing so. How did you determine what the agenda for the gospel writers or the Apocrypha writers or the Book of Enoch, all these other people, how did you determine what their agenda was?
Well, you can't, to put it simply.
You can't.
But you can go through the information that's been written down with the assumption that they were lying and the assumption that they were telling the truth without even knowing it. But it has to be
not a binary thing.
A face value.
It's not a binary thing when it comes. Seriously, look into Bible scholarship. Look into Bible scholarship. It's not a binary thing of are they lying or are they telling the truth. It's far more nuanced than that when you listen to what scholars have to say. We're talking about a time in history when people used to tell stories. And when they told the stories, it wasn't really a question of did this actually happen or not. It was about imparting wisdom using a story and not really questioning whether it was an actual historical story or not. It wasn't about trying to lie to people per se, or not lie to people in this kind of binary on-off thing that you're suggesting. It was far more nuanced. And quite frankly, I can remember some of the conversations that Johnny was talking to earlier. And I think what the picture that I'm painting in my mind is of someone who will go to this sacred texts website far more than he will go to Bible scholars and sit down with a book by Bart Ehrman or a book by Richard Carrier or a book by any number of other Bible scholars
into consideration
and learn what actual Bible scholars have to say about these books that you're apparently obsessed with.
I muted him because there was a lot of cross
so
chatter.
Just to absolutely clarify that point, I think he's more interested in what conspiracy theories and tantric whatever are on this website than he is in actually finding out what Bible scholars have to say, bearing in mind that Bible scholars are people who've devoted their careers to finding out where these books come from, who wrote them, when were they written, what were the objectives for writing them. Honestly, when I stopped being a Jehovah's Witness, my study of the Bible became so much more compelling, so much more interesting, so much more fruitful than it ever was when I was a believer. Because it turns out there is so much to learn about the Bible and where it comes from. And when I listen to Kevin's arguments, I'm hearing someone that hasn't done, frankly, the first bit of reading on Bible scholarship. And I feel as though future conversations with Kevin will be far more productive and will get to the heart of the matter far more readily if he accepts the fact that, first of all, he's being presuppositional in ascribing the Bible with things that you shouldn't necessarily ascribe it with. And secondly, if he could just give himself the most rudimentary knowledge of what Bible scholars say so that we don't have to keep schooling him on this each and every time.
Well said, Lloyd. I also detect that you're doing a bit of investigating his motivations in in bringing this, which is what Kevin has said was one of the very first things that he does when he investigates a new claim. How interesting that you would do that. Now, Kevin, you are about to be unmuted, so I want to go back to that point. I think Lloyd is exactly right. I think there is substantial amount of Bible scholarship done by folks who believe and folks who don't believe in the claims made by the Bible, and they work together on a lot of things to try to determine certain knowable facts about the writers, or at least facts about how the Bible was written and its influence through history. Now, you said very early on that a writer's motivation, their biases, their perspective, however you want to call it, was a key initial factor for you to consider when investigating a new hypothesis. And you then, when pressed about how you arrived at this sacred-text.com website, and when talking about the Apocrypha and different holy books, said, well, you can't know it, so you skip over it. I'm going to put you back on mute now, Kevin, because I haven't finished my very long sentence. You said you can just set that aside. Well, I wonder why you said that was important, and then you said you can set it aside. I want to know how you determined that their perspective, that their biases, that their what was the word you used to describe it? Lloyd, do you remember what the word was that he used to describe it? Because I didn't write that down. I have a notebook and I didn't write it down.
I'm sorry. You need to write these things down, Johnny. I'm not going to help you out here. You're on your own. How
did you determine, Kevin, that the writer of these apocryphal texts' perspective, their bias, their motivation was what it was? How did you determine it? Don't tell me it wasn't important. How did you determine what it was? Answer that question for me, would you?
The reason why I determined what it was is because it was necessary throughout the historical account of this to take into account the interference that happened. That's not
the answer. That's the answer to a different, very good question that I wish that I could ask at some point in the future. Kevin, I'm putting you on mute again. I'm asking you a very specific question. I'm asking you, how did you determine what the motivation or the perspective or the bias of the apocryphal writers was? What process did you use to determine what their bias was? And what did you determine their bias was? You are now unmuted.
I'm being honest when I tell you that it's impossible to determine their motivation because these people are long past. So we have nothing to go on but what's been written down.
That's not true.
You continues to listen to me because
that's just not true. Simply the fact, sorry, no, Kevin, simply saying they lived a long time ago, so it's impossible for us to say what their motivations are. That just does not cut it. You know, when you devote your career to scholarship, you don't just say, "Oh well, all of this happened so long ago. How can we possibly weigh in on this?" We'll just have to take everything we read at face value, because who are we in the 20th or 21st century to question where this stuff has come from or what their motives were? What I want to do, we're not going to spend too much more time on this call because we do have someone else in the queue, and it's a 90-minute show.
Believe it.
I have actually, if you could just mute him, because I have sat through quite a lot of this, and I do get to say something, surely, as the host. So I just wanted to recommend for Kevin, because I feel, with all due respect to you, Kevin, I think that the points that Johnny raised at the beginning of this call about you kind of being stuck on this loop of just calling in again and again and again and not really getting anywhere. I feel as though there's a solution to this, and the solution is research, and not just research on one website, on sacredtext.com or whatever, or on websites that are going to support your worldview. But let's go to Bible scholars. Let's listen to what they have to say. And while I was off camera, I grabbed a few books from my collection. Here's one, A History of the Bible, the Book and Its Faiths by John Barton. I recently used this in one of my rebuttal videos on my channel, and actually John Barton is a theist. So not all Bible scholars are atheists. There's this book by the late Simon Loveday, The Bible for Grown-Ups. That's a really good, neat overview of where the Bible comes from and how we can learn more about its origins. And a wonderful, wonderful book is The Bible Unearthed by Israel Finkelstein. I cannot recommend this enough. I frequently refer to it in my videos because it really shines a light on, again, where the Bible comes from and the people and geography that it's talking about. So I think in order to stop this just descending into this endless spiral of you calling in and us not getting anywhere, I would really recommend you buy at least one of these books or find a way of reading one of these books or a book like them. In other words, let's bring Bible scholars into the equation since you seem so interested in the Bible, and let's hear what people have to say who've actually devoted their careers to studying this.